There is rapture on the lonely shore, says Lord Byron, a great poet from the 19th century. And not a bad introduction to Sweetheart by J.D. Dillard.
Yeah, so we this is our fourth DC deep cuts, and we decided to choose this film because we haven't seen a lot of talk about it. It's a really excellent horror film, but it just kind of seems like it flew under the radar a little bit. But it's scary. It's well acted. It's interesting. It's got a cool setup. Very unique setting, and some cool messages and symbols and stuff that we're going to discuss here.
And a unique approach to Sweetheart. One thing I wanted to talk about initially, I hope you don't mind, is the title of the film.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about Sweetheart. So I did some research. I really love looking at the etymology of certain terms. And one website, I think it was English Live, they said the origin of the word sweetheart comes from the 13th century. And at that time, because little was known about, say, the heart and the circulatory system and how that worked, people used figurative terms to refer to the heart and as a means of describing people's personalities. And so if you have a brother who maybe gets very sensitive when a playful jest or jape is sent his way, you might call him soft-hearted. Or your cousin, who is prone to receiving all kinds of different illnesses or diseases, might be weak or faint-hearted.
Okay, yeah.
And so the term sweetheart, literally translating to someone with a sweet heart, someone who makes your own heart throb, who elevates your mood, who endears you towards him. And I think that's interesting insofar as that definition maybe plays out in certain points throughout the film, particularly at the end. But we're going to try to focus on the beginning and maybe, make some chronological approach in discussing the film. The modern day usage of sweetheart, I suppose, in our opinion, there might be two prevailing meanings or associations. The first is a term of affection of personal and general use. And so my wife and I, sometimes we call each other sweetheart. Yeah. And we do it as a pet term, a term of endearment, synonymous with, say, honey or baby shakes, etc. Yeah. Too much personal information, I should slow down. But the second term is one in which quite possibly a lot of people have been the recipient of. And it's a belittling or degrading term that can be used to demean or discredit a person and to distance themselves from who they really are, to reduce their entire character to that of someone who is weak and petulant, and in need of, let's say, masculine guidance.
Yeah, of authority, of a guiding figure, trying to highlight someone's ignorance or inability in a situation or in general. And that's the only time we hear the word uttered in the film. It seems to be like it's used that way. It's pretty clear it's used that way. It's also the boyfriend Lucas is talking down to Jenn, the main character.
Sweetheart, are you even listening to me?
It's also kind of ironic that we have this. It's a horror film, pretty gruesome at some parts and very scary at some parts. It has some really cool scares in it. That it's not called like Monster on the Island or something like that. It's called Sweetheart, a very disarming title for quite a good horror movie. So I think that catches our attention. Like there's House on Haunted Hill, The Ritual, The Damned, Sweetheart. I think that was a cool choice by the filmmakers to just title it that, not only for the irony in this film being in the horror genre, but also all the implications, how it is used within the film, and how that titling the film after that really emphasizes some of the themes of the movie.
It's so true. Yeah. In addition to that, the way or an example of what you just said, and the way the film was advertised, it was the title Sweetheart, with maybe a picture of Jenn, the protagonist, the main character, with a very colorful looking leafy backdrop.
Yeah, tropical island.
Tropical island behind her. It didn't. If it weren't for the genre titles, horror thriller,
the music,
what other genre title appendages they added to it, you wouldn't have even thought it was a horror film.
Yeah, until you start seeing things pop out and her running, breathless and scared and blood and stuff. Yeah, you'd have no idea with the setting there. Yeah. Do you want to move on to the setting?
Oh no, I think moving on to the setting is great. I was just gonna say as a means of starting our review of and our discussion of Sweetheart.
Yeah.
And just talking a little bit about what it's about, and it's a good opportunity to get into the setting.
Yeah.
So a girl named Jenn, she wakes up on the shoreline of
small tropical island.
Of a small tropical island, but even then we're not quite sure whether or not it's an island
tropical
or
place. Yeah.
Of a tropical place, and she shortly after she wakes up, she does a tour of the diameter.
Yeah.
So we get the idea that she's been kind of marooned there.
Yeah.
Which, in terms of our appreciation of horror settings, I think you're like me in some ways. I'm a slave and a deep appreciator of the isolated setting. Alien, Event Horizon, The Thing.
Yeah. The Shining.
The Shining. Maybe the best example of an isolated setting in The Shining, arguably.
And those settings are kind of, some of them can be cliche, like haunted house. We've seen that before. Spooky forest. We've seen that, a lot of that. And that's not to say that there can't be more good films put in those settings, but we have some, I think, internalized expectations when we see those settings. It's a haunted house. Oh, it's a creepy forest. It's abandoned factory or abandoned mental asylum, hospital.
All of which have icons that are unique to the horror genre. They're dark. They're far away. They're dirty or they're grungy.
Yeah.
But to base your horror film on a very brightly lit, crystalline sand beach, tropical green island.
Yeah, it's beautiful, it's colorful, it's vibrant, it's paradise.
It stands out as a setting in so many other films within the horror canon.
The only film I can think of, I was just looking at you and I saw this, that comes close is Jaws. It's not necessarily tropical, but it's a beach setting, it's warm, it's a vacation-y. That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. There might be something else out there that comes close to such a setting as this, which I think really throws us as well. So that we have the title of the film, Sweetheart, which really throws you. And then you have this beautiful, tropical, vibrant setting, which is also very atypical of the horror genre. So I think the film starts off very strong in catching our attention and is clearly trying to do something different. Yeah.
Oh, I completely agree. Dude, I'm sorry that you actually just noticed Jaws on the board. Is there anything else? No, there are just some comparisons. A lot of the horror of the film happens at night at this setting.
Yeah.
But the build-up and the tension of that horror happens during the day.
Yeah.
But even Jaws, the most horrific and fright-inducing aspects of the film are when they're away from the island, when the men are at sea. Another interesting thing is that Jaws has, arguably more well-known than the actual film, is that musical score.
Right.
Those two chords that that kind of mirror the anticipation of something running towards you, like sound of walking going towards your bed or something like that. Whereas the musical score, and I feel like I'm saying this now because I believe I'll forget. The score for Sweetheart, for the first that's going to be.
We have notes.
That's going to be a bit of a cut. I wonder that'll be a bit of a cut. The first, let's see, I wrote this down. I thought it was interesting. Oh yeah, so the first 20 minutes or score, 20 minutes or so, there's absolutely no music whatsoever.
Yeah.
There are bassy synth swells that almost sound like an underwater current or the roar of an ocean wave that kind of mirror the setting. Other than that, the ambient noise is just the leaves laughing in the wind.
Yeah, and the ocean.
It's the ocean going up and down. And it isn't until she sees the monster, the threat, for the first time, that suddenly you almost get this 80s inspired synth arpeggio.
Yeah.
And it's pretty shocking when you actually hear that, when it actually occurs. And contrasting that from the relative silence or from the natural ambience that occurred before that moment, it hits you a little bit harder. You don't expect it.
As well, it contrasts with again a typical horror movie. We're used to hearing strings and horns, high pitched violins. When you see the monster, Psycho or Jaws
music
or The Shining.
going out of its way to very obviously scare you, to instill terror within you.
And it gave me a slight reminder of Stranger Things. I don't know if there's any connection there, but the soundtrack, the score of Stranger Things, it has I think over the past couple of years become iconic. And is a great nostalgia kickback to 80s horror and things like that, and Steven Spielberg type things, Stephen King type horror, and the soundtrack to Stranger Things I think encompasses that vibe so well. Stephen King's early Spielberg stuff.
It does.
Speaking of Jaws,
there you go.
And having a recent movie that also has that kind of 80s synthy soundtrack when there's a popular TV show that's a horror TV show set in the 80s with a similar vibey soundtrack, I think was an interesting choice as well. It definitely caught my attention. I imagine other viewers might have been like, oh, that's a little bit like Stranger Things. So again, interesting choice by the filmmakers very early on. The music's different than your typical horror movie. The title's different than the typical horror movie, and the setting is very different from a typical horror movie. So what about the substance of the movie itself?
So we read some reviews after we saw this film, and one critique that I kept getting or kept reading from reviewers and critics was the fact that the film did not provide enough exposition or backstory for the main character, Jenn. For the first 40 minutes of the film, if we can give this film a 2-act structure, and for the first 40 minutes, she's completely alone on an island. I half expected Captain Nemo to pop out from the mysterious island. If you've seen that film or watched that book, it's fantastic. Seen that film or watched that book. After you watch the book, you should probably read it. It's great. I was kind of half expecting someone to pop up of that kind. But a lot of reviewers were saying, well, because of the lack of backstory or the lack of exposition or the lack of information that we can get from the character, information that we could have gotten, say, from prior character interactions, or a voiceover or a flashback or something of that kind, it's difficult for the viewer to invest, say, empathy in the lead character. But I was gonna
say, I'm pretty sure that was done very intentionally.
It certainly was.
Not only because it doesn't tell us anything about Jenn when she arrives. We learn her name's Jenn. One of her friends, Brad, dies in front of her there. She tries to help him out, and he unfortunately dies. And then she's there on the island, and we see her for the first, about 40 minutes of the film, showing all kinds of resourcefulness, mental, emotional, physical strength in surviving, taking care of herself and doing what she can to survive. And not only that, but we see her with a journal. She has her bag. She gets on the island. She's looking through the stuff that she does have with her, her supplies. Resourceful, going through what she has, what she can use. She finds a journal. She opens it up, and all the pages have been wiped out by the water. All the ink has bled. You can't read anything. So her past has very literally been erased from this journal, and showing us, the viewer, that her past doesn't matter. That past isn't significant to the film. What we're going to provide you with is a character in the moment. And you're going to learn about her personality, her strengths, her weaknesses by watching her, not hearing some voiceover explaining her life.
That's exactly why I disagree with those. With those reviewers.
What you see is what you get.
The director, Judy Dillard, is beckoning the viewer. To watch carefully. And to form your appreciation of Jenn. And if you do that when you watch this film,
based on her actions, you see her,
and
you see what you see is what you get with her.
And we'll provide some good examples. And what all this leads up to is that when her former companions finally drift on a tent into the island,
Yeah.
there's a really big discrepancy between the Jenn that you appreciate as a viewer, having her struggle over difficulty, and the Jenn that is perceived by those companions. So, for example, now what can we know about Jenn? She wakes up on a beach, and the first thing that she does is not find injury in her own body or do a reconnaissance of the area. She notices that someone that she knows is lying face down in the water, and she immediately gets up and rushes over to him.
Yeah, and then
showing a certain amount of care and altruism.
Yeah, she realizes, okay, I need some things. I need to find water. So she runs to the island, finds water, finds coconuts. She breaks the coconut open to get water for her friend, and we see every step of the movie up until that 40-minute or so mark. She teaches herself how to spear fish. She makes a hammock up in the trees where she can sleep at night. She hides in a log from the monster that we'll discuss soon enough. She makes a fire. Making fire is hard.
Displaying, some important attributes and characteristics that instead of being spoon-fed to the audience or given freely to the viewer, the coconut shows a certain amount of determination and resilience on her behalf. She doesn't give up.
And care for her friend.
Care for her friend. The ingenuity and the craftiness that she displays in making these rather crude but effective tools.
Yeah.
That she uses for other purposes. The makeshift campsite that she erects is another example of that. But you also see her struggle.
Yeah.
In order to achieve these things.
Yeah.
Which I think is important.
Yeah. She's not. It's pretty clear that she's not some survivalist or professional outdoors person. These look like challenges for her. Yet she's finding ways to overcome these challenges, and she does so fairly effectively. So I think what's cool is you're not provided with a background for this character. Her history in this journal is literally erased from view. We know nothing about her. So we get to see her kind of building a new version of herself on this island, this survival version of Jenn, right there in the moment, and we can learn to appreciate, respect, and admire her for all those skills she displays in that first half of the movie.
And not only, you're absolutely right, but not only through her successes, but also through her failures.
Yeah, and she learns.
She's, if you can imagine yourself, and I can definitely imagine, say, us in a similar situation, we would not be immune to, say, dumb mistakes. At one point, she almost tries to swim away from the island on a suitcase.
Yeah.
Which fails quite miserably, but it's often not in the successes of in life as in film. It's not the successes of another person that draws you towards them. It's their imperfections.
Yeah.
It's the attempt and the failure. And
she grows from those.
Yeah. She does.
First night she hides in the bushes from the monster. Second night she hides in a log. The log gets destroyed.
But then what does she do? She
builds a hammock up in the trees, and then by the end of the film she's fighting back. She builds traps and uses fire to her advantage.
Yeah, that's a good point here. So she begins by hiding in the bush, and then she builds the hammock. And I hope I get this. I hope I get the chronology right. But then she goes fishing, and she uses the fish grits from fish that she had cut up.
I think chum.
Chum. Pardon me. She uses some chum to lure the shark. And when she finally gets the shark, and it's a beautiful moment, and she starts screaming in happiness, and she almost looks around as if to.
Did you see this? I got a shark.
Either to share her joy, or maybe like out of instinct. Maybe being too loud.
Oh shit! Yes! 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 Oh shit!
And you think that she's going to eat the shark, but no, she uses it as bait. Or maybe even just to see the threat,
see the monster,
to see the threat that she's up against. And so then there's the creature itself. And what a cool creature!
I think it has one of the cooler creature monster introductions for a long time. The the first time we see the monster is pretty cool. Jenn shoots out this flare gun, hoping for safety, hoping for salvation. As a plane passes by, or had just passed by, she's hoping to catch their attention. The flare shoots out, goes over the ocean. She's hoping that the plane will circle around and rescue her. And as the flare goes over the horizon, we see it illuminate the silhouette of this monster stepping up out of the ocean, and that's when Jenn first gets a view, as well as us when we first get this first view of this monster. Really cool introduction to what becomes her terror on the island.
And a tremendous and a powerful contrast from everything that's happened before.
Yeah.
It was around, I forget if it was the 14 or 18 minute mark. It could have even been the 20 minute mark when I wrote down, now it's a creature feature. Because I didn't know what to expect when I first saw it.
Yeah.
In retrospect, there were some clues, but those clues maybe could have been explained by different phenomena, right?
Yeah,
there was
the half-eaten shark on
the half-eaten shark, all the cut-up fish, the fact that Jenn found some camping and clothing equipment of the island's former occupants, of people who had vacationed on the island before, and all their stuff was left behind.
Yeah.
And so the viewer received some idea that there was something to be dreaded on the island. But for the first, say, 15 to 20 minutes of the film, you weren't sure what.
Yeah.
There was also the scene of her swimming and finding that mysterious
hole in the ground, hole in the
water,
hole in the ground, underwater, yeah.
Hole in the ocean floor. And you're right, and I didn't really consider the fact that here was a moment, and kudos to her for seizing the opportunity.
Yeah.
She took the flare gun when she heard a plane passing overhead. She shot up in the air. And as the flare was beginning to settle down on the water, it illuminated the silhouette of this very strange creature that turned towards her.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happened, she knew that she was in some peril and had to run away and do something about it.
Yeah, she acted immediately too.
And it wasn't until a couple scenes later, and again, she was still alone on the island at this point.
Yeah.
None of her companions had arrived just yet. When you started getting, similar to, say, the Ritual monster motor, you don't reveal the monster all at once. You do it piecemeal.
Yeah.
You do it body part by body part. You don't let the audience know exactly what the threat is until maybe near the end of the film. You get some pretty interesting snippets of this monster. You realize its speed, its strength, its what it wants. It's basically an apex merman predator that takes whatever it wants.
Yeah.
And that has rule and absolute dominion over the inhabitants of the island, and maybe has for some time. One question that I had initially was, why does it attack only at night? Or I was thinking about that the first time that I saw
For the most part of the movie, yeah.
You find out later that it doesn't necessarily.
Yeah.
But I thought for those initial scenes, maybe it's because, and why doesn't it attack every night as well? Maybe
it didn't seem to show up on the first night she was there, I believe. Yeah.
The first, or maybe even the second. Or maybe it was the second night when she fired the flare gun. But I thought, well, maybe it's accustomed to having the odd, say, stranded person marooned on the island, or the odd vacationer scouting out and then, having a picnic on the island. And it attacks at night because that's when people are the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
They can see it much less. It's adapted itself to its surroundings to an astonishing degree, and ergo, it's kind of an apex predator. The sharks and the fish, anything else that's in the reef that surrounds the island is subservient to it, and especially the people that may or may not inhabit the island. In an interview, I think with Refinery 29, the main actress, Jenn, she revealed a little bit, without mentioning too many names, that she and the director, J.D. Dillard, wanted the monster, in no small part, to represent someone who went into office during the 2016 election.
Somewhere in the world.
And that in some inchoate designs of the monster, they were thinking of having it like all white.
Yeah.
For example. Yeah. Which I think is really, really interesting. I think it's cool. Another thing that I like is that the sound of the monster. It has a sniggering, kind of almost mocking laughter.
It does.
Tone. A couple of times when my wife and I were watching it, and I was like, "Oh, he's He's laughing at her. He's mocking her as he follows her around this island.
You were mentioning something earlier about what the island itself might represent.
Yeah, I thought...
Related to that.
Yeah, very much so. So, again, maybe the monster is a symbol, say, of a certain president who went into
Former
office.
president.
Sorry, pardon me. I'm from Canada, Richie's from America.
Former president.
That's no excuse, but I'm going to milk it for all it's worth. Yeah, so if the monster does represent that former president, I thought when I was rewatching it that maybe the island is kind of a stand-in for America itself.
Yeah.
You have this visually pristine island that's abundant with natural beauty and natural wonder, reminiscent of maybe the green rolling hills and the crystalline sandy beaches that surround America. And America is visually quite stunning in some areas.
Some places. There's some nice places.
And so if the island is a stand-in or a symbol of America, then the monster that terrorizes it, that holds sway and dominion over it, well, is a monster that we all know, but not love.
It's a place that we want to go to. We have, in America, the American dream. People from all around the world want to visit America for vacation, and a lot want to go there to live because there's the idea of opportunity there, that if you work hard enough, you can achieve the American dream. It's paradise, it's heaven for a lot of people that are in rough situations around the world and need to move someplace better. And this island looks like a paradise. Superficially, it's beautiful, it's enticing, it's where you want to go. And when Jenn's companions finally do, we end up surviving whatever caused them to be marooned and floating in the ocean for a couple of days. When they do arrive, her boyfriend Lucas and her friend Mia, Mia arrive on the island. They say, "Oh, this place is great. It's wonderful."
They don't want to leave.
Yeah, they want to stay there.
Paradise.
God, this place is beautiful. It's a miracle.
It's incredible.
How is there soda here?
There was a family here a long time ago, and they left a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, from the outside, the image of America and the image of this island are beautiful from an outsider's perspective. But when you go there and look below the surface, see it...
Literally.
Yeah, look below the surface, the hole under the ground, and see when the light's taken away, when you have to, use your own vision, your own night vision, and
No, you're right. You're right.
And look into the shadows, you see that there are terrifying things going on the island, which Jenn warns them about and says we have to go. And you realize the same thing, unfortunately, in America. Yeah. So I think that takes us to kind of one of the bigger themes of the movie, which is... Right.
No, but I thought you were talking about a different thing. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. So some of the themes, one of the bigger themes of the movie seems to be highlighting racism and sexism in the world in general, and maybe more specifically in America.
In equal turn. I might just say as a quick footnote, our protagonist is a black woman.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that she was cast that way, and the other actors, virtually actually all the other actors,
are white.
Are white, and that serves a significant purpose. That was my footnote.
Yeah. Thank you. Your foot was noted.
Can you smell it?
And I think the way, as we mentioned earlier, the film's structured in an interesting way where we're given no background on Jenn. Her past is erased in terms of what we see. And we have to piece together what her character is like as we watch her. We're not giving anything. It's more show, don't tell. And what we see is her being strong. What we see is her being smart and using ingenuity, learning from her mistakes. taking her situation, taking a note of her surroundings, taking it all in, and doing what she can to best survive in that very harsh condition.
A beautiful combination of self-guidance and resourcefulness that advances our understanding of her character in ways that maybe character interactions never would.
Yeah.
We're seeing her completely alone and completely free
Yeah.
to be herself. Maybe she doesn't
Be herself,
see.
yeah.
Maybe she doesn't see it that way. She's marooned on an island.
Yeah.
But we see her in almost a natural state. But it's only when the others arrive that we see a completely different version of her, or we're made to see, because
Perspective of her.
they force their own perspective of her on her.
Yeah. When her boyfriend Lucas and her friend Mia arrive, she's been on this island. She can spearfish. She's survived monster attacks. She tried to save the life of her dying friend, and she buried his body. She's done a lot. Her friends, when they arrive, they're totally oblivious to these things, and they talk down to her, especially when she starts relating her experience to them. When she says, "This island's dangerous. There's a monster here. Brad is dead." They talk down to her, and then we get this kind of big moment we've been leading up to, where her boyfriend Lucas calls her sweetheart in a very demeaning way, talking down to her as a woman and not understanding the reality of her experiences as a woman and as a black person.
Not yet. Refusing to believe and to acknowledge the reality of her experiences as a woman, and maybe also as a black person.
Yeah.
He pigeonholes. Forgive me. He pigeonholes her entire personality into that one little word.
Yeah.
I mean, reducing all of the accomplishments that he refuses to appreciate or to acknowledge, and discrediting all of those things at the same time, which incenses her, and it should.
Yeah.
It should. She should be rightfully upset about that.
Yeah, and I think this, as viewers, upsets us because we know she's not this little sweetheart that he refers to her as. We know she's strong. We know she's tough. We know she's a badass. And she's smart and caring. Yet he doesn't seem to see that, and Mia doesn't seem to see that either. It's not until they see the monster, they are forced to see the ugly reality that she's been facing night after night, that they finally start to believe her. Even when they don't believe her, she tries to show them proof. There's a Polaroid of one of the previous families that had been on the island, or we can assume died by way of the monster. She saw the Polaroid and saw a woman standing there that sees eyes in the background, and that's the monster. She has photographic proof that something's wrong, and she shows this to her friends, and they don't believe it. And I saw this as sort of an analog for some of the video footage of police brutality against people in the black community. Despite these murders taking place on film, there are people still in denial over racism and horrible things like that in the world. Perhaps these Polaroids represent that in the film.
Yeah, they will not acknowledge her history with violence and oppression on the island. And again, that the island is a symbol of America itself.
Yeah.
They refuse to acknowledge that history, and they demean her for it in a very mocking, patronizing tone. They do it so much that when Jenn attempts to leave the island on the raft, they tie her to a tree.
They hit her with an oar, knocked her out, and when she woke up, she was tied up to a tree. Yeah.
They handcuff her, and when she pleads to be
what'd she say?
When she pleads to be released and to better explain her position, they still refuse to do it. It's only when the monster eventually attacks Mia while she's taking a casual stroll down the beach, and Lucas goes to try to protect her, and I believe he whacks the mermaid monster on the back.
Yeah,
and gets a nice little glimpse as to what he's up against.
Yeah.
That he finally wakes up a little bit.
Yeah, can I pause you for just a second?
Please.
While she's tied up,
go.
While she's tied up, the dialogue exchange is she says, "Untie me," and they say, "Not until you relax." And that struck me as very reminiscent of how some police officers talk to people they've handcuffed, oftentimes black people, that haven't done anything requiring being handcuffed or being arrested. It seemed very reminiscent of this issue between police brutality and the harm it's doing to the black community.
You have no, in other words, you have no freedom or choice or ability in this situation until I impose my form of superior order onto you.
Yeah. When you obey me, then we can talk. And it shined through pretty bright. That moment upon a second viewing, yeah, pretty powerful moment. A couple other things relating to that. Lucas, while Lucas and Mia are totally oblivious to the monster, despite Jenn's very impassioned attempts at convincing them that there's something murderous on the island. She tries to show them the photograph. They just say it's just light. It's just a mistake in the picture. Despite this evidence there, they demean her by calling her sweetheart, talking down to her. What else? The black. Oh, no, go ahead.
Can I add? I'm just adding to this this litany of mistreating a character whom we've come to root for up until the 40-minute mark of this film.
Yeah.
We know what she's capable of,
Yeah.
and we know the real life struggle against what very much might sound like a very unbelievable creature.
Yeah.
We know her struggle with this person. But one thing that shocked me is that as soon as they got off the raft, Lucas and Mia, he wrapped his arms around her. And maybe because of habit, and they are dating, were dating in the past, I think she kind of like tucks herself and lets him wrap her arms around her.
Yeah.
But he kept saying, it's okay, I'm here now,
Yeah,
it's okay.
Like he's taking care of her.
And whereas later on in the film, she's doing that for him.
Yeah.
When the threat of the monster is finally unveiled to him, and he clues in and realizes that she's been telling the truth all along.
Yeah.
He becomes much more subservient and frightened for her. He was hiding, and the next morning he was hiding up in a tree. And she's like, oh, he doesn't come down, during the day, in my experience. And still,
are you sure?
He displays this almost childish reluctance to climb down from his perch.
She has to mother him through the next day or so.
Oh, yeah.
And she shows him what she can do, catching fish, jumping down from this tree, confident in her safety, and both of their safety. Only after he's experienced the ugliness of the island for himself, he won't trust a black woman, despite knowing her well. He won't trust her words. He says she has a black cloud hanging over her all the time, and I imagine this alludes to how marginalized communities, black community, other people of color, women, non-straight people, how they tell the world of their struggle, of their oppression, and people not in that group kind of say, yeah, you're just complaining, you're whiny, stop whining about it, the world's fine. But it's more a matter of people not in that position just not being able to see it, not seeing the problem, thus believing the problem doesn't exist, not seeing the cloud that does exist over their heads and that does need to be resolved.
Willful or not, it's a certain kind of blindness. And let's say, had Lucas and Mia been able to witness from an impossible bird's eye or even close-up camera of all of Jenn's victories on the island, from the fashioning of certain tools to erecting the campsite, to making fire, to cooking food, to catching the food, to baiting the monster, to burying her friend. And dealing stoically with the emotional repercussions of that, and the brazen fact that she's stuck on this island and must contend with a very powerful, inexplicable creature that hunts her at night. Had they been able to witness all of that, then maybe they would have a much different opinion.
Yeah.
But instead, they just don't believe her.
Yeah.
To the extent where they think she's crazy or insane.
Yeah, it's to the point where they tie her up.
And that it's their responsibility to take care of her by tying her up and thus saving her maybe from her own self, or saving them.
Which is reminiscent of kind of the colonialism, reasons for enslavement of non-Europeans. They would say, oh, we're saving them from themselves, we're saving them from hell, we're going to convert them into Christians, we're not, being a slave is better than, being a heathen and going to hell, so we're going to teach them to be good Christians. It's kind of, we're saving them, we're doing this horrible thing for their benefit. It comes out a little bit like that, which ties in with the greater themes of the movie.
That's, bridging off of this theme, and I was describing this to you briefly, but there was something else that I took some note of. I don't know if the director intended this or not. Maybe he did. Living on this island is a very apt, very capable person who has learned how to deal with their situations and their surroundings, and to make the best with what they have and what that island has to offer.
Yeah.
And then, if a theme of colonialism is in the cards, you have some white people drifting in on a flotation device, on some kind of raft, on some kind of boat, and as soon as they arrive, they start to insist that the person living there has it all wrong.
Yep.
No, that's not true. Or you're hallucinating. Oh my God, that's your history and everything that you've experienced on this island is probably just some hallucination brought about the fact that you don't know as much as we do. Yes. And hey, we possess. Hey, you got like a spear. Well, I have a knife.
Yeah, your spear's made of wood. Yeah, we have this knife. We have better tools, better technology. Therefore, we're right in a moral way.
And you can't leave because we know you better than you do. And we have more knowledge in this regard than you might ever possess. In fact, we're going to tie you up to a tree. We're actually going to imprison you because we have your best interests at heart.
Yeah.
It sounds eerily familiar, not just say to American colonialism, but to colonialist colonialist narratives around the world.
Yeah. The theme, when you dive into the movie, and the colonialism aspect wasn't obvious to me the first time I viewed it, but last night that started to click in, and then you mentioned it as we were having a brief discussion before filming, and like, oh wow, yeah, they come in on a boat and then they tie her up. So it's really cool. This movie, I think, is similar to The Ritual in that it's deceptive with how deep it is. The Shining is clearly a very deep movie. There's a lot going on there, but here it seems like a very simple film, but there are some really interesting and deep layers to it.
I was just about to say that the theme is multi-layered. You could call it, and you wouldn't be incorrect, as in like a survival self-belief film. You follow one character and her personal journey, and at the end of the film you feel cathartic, and you feel a little bit hopeful, even though there's some ambiguity as to how she might get off this island. Yeah. But she overcomes her
fears and the monster.
She overcomes her fears, but and the oppressive circumstances of her life.
Yeah.
And whether that monster is an allegory or a symbol for, say, an ex-president, or her relationship, her oppressive relationship with Lucas, or perhaps her lack of self-belief within herself.
Yeah.
She overcomes that, and so like her personal journey is one that I think anybody can take note of, appreciate, and enjoy. I felt a similar feeling of relief, that gulp of fresh air in and out of the body. After the film was over, I thought, sweet, and arguably, I was telling this to you earlier, those are some of my favorite horror films. Some horror films do end rather bleakly or miserably, and there's a reason for that. And those horror films are great, but maybe the ones I like the best are when you see a character who's beset on all sides, from outside circumstances, from other characters, maybe from their own hubris, their own tragic flaw, or a combination of both, which is arguable in this film. And yet you see them come out on top.
Yeah, the film ends a little more hopefully than some of the others, like The Wailing. for example. Very, very bleak ending.
Wailing.
The witch is a little rough, depending on who you are, I guess. Yeah. Speaking of symbolism, I guess let me wrap it up with some of the symbols we noticed in the movie throughout that were interesting and discussion worthy.
Sure, and maybe as a means of supporting in that regard. And just to finish up my own point, there was one personal theme, but as we've already explained, there are some social and political themes that kind of follow the first theme with the first group of themes that we mentioned rather closely.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that tight-knit nature between.
Yeah, it's very much tight-knit in this movie. It's not scattered in a haphazard way.
Her own personal journey isn't different from, say, the political themes that are echoed throughout the film.
So some of the cool things we noticed, some of them we maybe have a better handle on, some of them less so. One of the ones that I'm still pondering over is early on in the movie, first 15 minutes or so, she sits on the beach, she has her bag with her, it's her bag. She opens it up, sees what she has, sees what supplies and tools she has available to her to help her survive on the island. Pulls out a hat, pulls out a journal that's been, all the ink's been washed out. And she pulls out like a little photo booth set of pictures of her. It looks like she's sitting beside or sitting on the lap of a man. We can assume maybe it's Lucas, perhaps it's an ex-boyfriend or someone, but we can't tell because this person's wearing a skull mask, a mask of death, and she's kissing him on the cheek in one picture, and we were discussing what that might represent, that it might foreshadow she's going to have a close encounter with death. Okay.
Which I think is a strong and justifiable perception.
Yeah, but I think there's also more there that seems a little too obvious almost, too on the nose maybe. Perhaps it is Lucas wearing this skull mask. Perhaps it was last Halloween.
And she's in a toxic relationship.
Yeah. She's in a relationship with someone who brings her down, someone who will lead to her death, or maybe not physical death, but like I think you said, her individual identity, death of her identity.
Yeah, if we think of death as a lack of self or a lack of self-fulfillment, then that picture would symbolize and suggest that if she were to remain in that kind of relationship, then she wouldn't fully realize the self that, well, depending on how you look at it, fortuitously or not, she in many ways does fulfill during her time on the island.
Yeah, because when she is alone, she's herself, and it's an amazing self that she is, but when Lucas shows up, she kind of shrinks in, and perhaps that's just kind of what she's been expected to do by her friends and perhaps society as a whole. She's expected to behave subserviently and girly when they're around, but when she has to take care of herself, she can really do it. She really has strength inside. And that death mask, that death that she's connected with, brings her down, so she needs to separate from that so she can be her true, strong, badass self.
And as any good member of society, you want to promote the truest portrait of who a person actually is.
Yeah.
You want to be able to support and encourage the truest culmination of another person.
Yeah.
Be it even a friend or even a stranger. We all know the experience of what it's like to try to act a certain way because you think it's expected of you, or maybe even to appease or to propitiate another person, but then you're not really. I know that's a big headline, and sometimes it bothered me when I was young when someone said to me, "Be yourself." And I often look at them quizzically. I'm like, I don't know who you. do you know me more than me?
Yeah.
I don't know. But that version of Jenn, and I say that version of Jenn, but maybe I think perhaps a truer example. No, the Jenn that we see in the first 40 minutes is very different from the Jenn that we see in the next 40 minutes. Yeah. But it has nothing to do with the viewer's perception of her. It's how she acts when suddenly she's around the white society that has come to the island.
Yeah.
She acts in a manner in which perhaps it's expected for her act, she still shows some resolve and some important resilience because of everything she had learned and accomplished for the initial 40 minutes of the film. Yet at the same time, yeah, we are kind of made to see her in no small part because the opinions of Mia and Lucas were being thrust upon her. You're crazy. You're a sweetheart. Hey, it's okay. We're here now. We're here to take care of you. I mean, how embarrassingly patronizing is that?
Yeah, especially after us knowing how awesome she is. Like, I wouldn't survive on that island. I know I wouldn't.
How tremendously capable she is. And
Yeah.
she, the coconut scene for me was almost like the hallmark. Oh, she's got it.
Yeah, like.
Have you ever opened a coconut?
I once had I was in Borneo, and I went to Lokawi Wildlife Park, which is a really nice wildlife park. The animals were treated well there when I was there, and it was a.
No, I'm listening.
That was.
I'm just excited to hear what's going to happen next.
I had a coconut breaking contest against an orangutan.
What?
On the island, they had a young orangutan there. They had her out over here, and they asked volunteers to come up, and I volunteered, and they gave me a head start. They cracked it for me a little bit, gave me a little finger hold, and they said, okay, we're going to count down, and just I basically did nothing, and then this young orangutan nearby me had it open, and she was enjoying the deliciousness inside.
No, but
So opening up coconuts.
Orangutans are strong. Were you given any prop, any tools?
They cracked it for me. They gave me like a little handhold, so I could start to open it. They gave her no advantage.
Right.
So yeah.
Well,
I was pathetic.
In the film, Jenn did use a sharp-edged
Yeah.
stone.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Anyway, point is, opening a coconut's very hard.
Mm.
And that's how she starts the movie. First 5-10 minutes, she's cracking open a coconut, and just shows her resolve and her strengths, her capability.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
One other cool symbol we noticed was that when Jenn attacked the monster, its blood was black, and later on, she says it bleeds black blood. Very interesting choice of words. Yeah.
I mean, a very specific, well-chosen phrasing.
Yeah, and one thing to consider is that the first half or so of this movie, there's barely any speaking. It's Jenn on the island alone, surviving and fighting a monster. She doesn't say much beyond the occasional expletive when she catches a fish. So this movie has maybe half the dialogue of your average movie of the same length. So the words, I'm guessing, are going to be chosen very carefully. And she says, when she's trying to explain to Lucas and to Mia, trying to explain this monster, she says it bleeds black blood, which can be taken in two ways. In the literal way of the movie, where the monster itself has black blood. When you injure it, the black blood comes out. It bleeds black blood. But also, to bleed something could be taken as to inflict damage on that thing to where it bleeds.
You're the catalyst, the causer.
Yeah, the causer of the bleeding. So it causes black blood. The monster causes black blood. And if the monster represents, I don't know, some recently elected out official from America.
We never talked about this, nor did we agree not even to mention his name.
Yeah. Oh no.
You can cut that out.
Yeah. No. Yeah. This is totally on the fly. So saying it bleeds black blood, if the monster represents who it's very strongly hinted at that it represents, and bleeding black blood, bleeding being the catalyst, the causation of the bleeding, that particular leader didn't do much for the black community, and it could be very, it could be argued that he did a lot of harm to the black community in inciting racists, for example, that perhaps maybe stormed a Capitol building somewhere.
And even not doing anything let's say for the black community is still doing a lot of harm.
Yeah, because
right? Indifference is as great a sin.
Yeah, because
a word that haunted my Catholic upbringing.
Damage was already being done, and to not actively work against that harm that was being done, is a sin. To sit by and let it happen, let it continue to happen while being aware that it's happening,
is a transgression in and of itself.
Exactly. So it bleeds black blood was a really interesting line that caught our attention. The last thing I've got is perhaps it's a bit of a stretch. We were both teachers and we both taught literature at our schools, and one of my favorite books to teach the kids. Because it's an amazing book, it's an interesting book, and also because it really seems to affect my students.
Did you read it when you were younger as well?
No, I didn't. The first time I read it was as I was teaching it a couple of years ago.
Is
Lord of the Flies. Sorry,
William Golding.
William Golding, yeah. And it's I think the comparison between the two is very easy to make in some ways, superficially. So I was kind of keeping an eye out for maybe a little bit more deeper connections. I don't know if they're there, but it's set on an island. These kids end up washed up on an island. They believe there's a monster on the island, and it spooks them, it scares them, it's horrific. And one of the major themes of the novel is of the inner evil of humanity. There's a little bit of evil in all of us, and that it's hard to suppress. And this evil can easily get out of hand and cause utter destruction. And all this is happening on an island, which is a microcosm of this nuclear war that's going on in the world of the novel. And it ends with these young boys in their it's easy to say immaturity, but again, the adults are having a nuclear war right outside. But in their inner evil, in allowing their inner evil to pop out, they set fire to the island, destroying this paradise that they could live on, this safe place when all this nuclear war is happening around them, the safe, isolated place, and the fire destroys this paradise. But in destroying it, signals the military of their presence and their rescue. And we can see something a little bit similar at the end of Sweetheart, where she, in battling the monster that does exist, she sets the island partially on fire, but as the camera zooms out, as the credits start to roll, the island is partially on fire. And we don't know if she gets rescued, so there's some ambiguity there. Is this beautiful paradise of an island that might represent America totally going to be destroyed, or will that fire be put out by the next rain or by some firefighters who come by? Will that fire be big enough to signal her rescue? Good for her. And ideally, the fire gets put out and it catches attention and she gets rescued. We never know. So it ends on a more hopeful note than Lord of the Flies, which I thought was kind of cool.
Dude, completely. Lord of the Flies was great. One of the things that shocked me the most was the fact that culminating in the destruction of the island was the fact that these young adolescent boys were also killing each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes in some very gruesome ways. On Sweetheart, her cutting off the head.
Yeah.
Although the ending is kind of ambiguous, and we don't know if that small island serves as, say, a microcosm of, say, American values or culture, she makes sure, by cutting off the head of the monster, that she has proof to inform whoever's coming to save her in the future, or whoever might come to save Americans in the future, that this thing happened.
Yeah.
That this event in time actually occurred.
Yep.
And that we should remember it, appreciate it, internalize it.
Yeah. And learn and grow from it.
And learn it, and learn and grow from it. Yeah, most certainly. I love the ending of it. I thought.
Yeah.
I felt hopeful the fact that she was just even alive at all, because in a lot of horror films they just pick off the main character. Yeah. Their lives are either over, or it's hard to imagine that they'll ever grow out of the cruelty that they experienced. Their lives might be the first forever. I'm done for almost ending it soon. I just want to add that I appreciated the fact that the main hero of this story was a female.
Yeah.
Not to mention a black female.
Yeah.
There are few characters in the horror genre, and in the horror genre particularly, that you can compare her to.
Yeah.
There are a few female characters outside of the well-parodied stock character of the final girl, that the slasher genre imported.
Yeah.
There are a few female characters that stand out as strong, independent, self-driven women, and that would serve as excellent models for say, young girls. Ripley stands out in Alien.
Yeah, Ripley, for sure, yeah.
Bit. But unlike in Sweetheart, for the first, who knows, maybe hour of runtime into Alien, you weren't actually sure who the main character was. And they employed, if anything, a false protagonist or a decoy in John Hurt's character.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe arguably being the biggest name at that time. Whereas in Sweetheart, you have this black female who basically is in every single frame of this film from start to finish.
And what wonderful acting too.
Yeah.
To be a young actor.
Very, very good
and
acting.
to have this role, and the whole movie's there on her shoulders, and she did an excellent job portraying this character and exposing the themes of this movie to the audience. What a wonderful job.
And also adding to the uniqueness of this film as a member in the horror canon.
Yeah.
I mean, how many protagonists can you come across that are similar to Jenn?
Strong female black characters. Us is maybe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, us. Pardon me.
Us.
Yeah, us. Yeah.
Us, Sweetheart. Those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head.
And very modern too.
Us is very recent, last 2 years or so, 2 or 3 years. So hopefully we'll see more people represented in future horror films in general. But anyway, yeah.
To J.D. Dillard and to the wonderful cast and crew of Sweetheart, thank you very, very much for this awesome horror experience. We are Fear fans.
If you have any comments, questions, anything discussion worthy, if we got something wrong, let us know down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe below. That's really important to us. We're a small channel, so every like and subscribe we get, we notice it, we see it. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.